the story that we'll be breaking down today, you'll find that it's not so strange. So our essential question, so what story themes do you think exist in all cultures? What is a story that we all kind of tell? This might be a thinker. Ooh, like a Cinderella story, so a rags to riches deal. Any other big themes you can think of? Creation, yeah. Every story has some sort of creation, or every culture has some sort of creation story, or a big flood, a big event. But what about between people? We have similar ways of explaining the world, but there are some crossovers with how we see people. Ooh, forbidden love. Yes, love in general and forbidden love. Totally correct. You hit the nail on the head. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is that big story theme. And you'll find that it isn't so strange before we dive in. So I'm going to have you tell me what you think is going on in the artwork before you ask your question. So you can write on the board here, but I'm pointing at a few things that you see in the artwork today. So the blue line right here is touching something in the picture. And we can break down, I won't make you do it all by yourself, Elizabeth, but why don't you choose two and I'll do the third. Two things, and this isn't about a right or wrong deal, you're just telling me what you think is going on. This is, the core of art history right here, is looking at a picture and trying to figure out what the image is saying before we ever justify it, meaning research it. Exactly, so you have your Islamic and Arabic script above, literally narrating the image that you're looking at. If you could, even if you can read such script, it's very difficult because this is a miniature, so this is a small painting on a manuscript. And it's incredibly stylized. This is also a terrible resolution of the image too. So, and you can choose one more thing that's happening in this scene, and I'll do the other. Peasant children playing in the streets, right? Very good. That's the exterior of this space. And it's funny that you chose that one, because this one right here is in fact the teacher. You can tell because they are the largest in the room. So if the teacher is the largest, what age would you put these children at? You can give a guess. It doesn't really say so in the story, but you can start to put yourself in the age of said children. Yeah, between 8 to 15, they're pretty young. And you know that this is the teacher, therefore where are we? The school, right. And so what books are we reading here? I'm glad you're on board today, Elizabeth, because I know you probably know. Yeah. So this is a school. They are normally reading a mix of the Quran and other books out. As per the Islamic tradition, what are these things holding up the books? From here, they look like X's on the screen. So I see a green X where my cursor is now. I see a blue X right here. Do you know what those are? Yeah, it's a stand. Why do you think they choose to read books on a stand? There's a sort of a divine superstition belief about that. Or even, it's not even superstition. It's more about respect. Hi, Erin. So we're breaking down what's happening in this piece. Right. Also, very, very true. You don't want to mess them up on the floor. Anything that touches the floor, including your feet, is seen as dirty. Therefore, if you put the Quran, or actually technically any Arabic script, on the floor, it's seen as like a divine insult, that you're insulting God in that. So this is why even in nomadic societies, you have these sort of book stands, which are really nifty things. They look like two giant forks sliding into one another, right? But the whole design is to keep the book open. You kind of see people in the West have them in their kitchens a lot. They sell them like for like recipe books, like you can keep your recipe book open, which I think most people just look at recipes on the phone now. But you might see them in advertisements. The same concept, but no book should be on the floor. That's not going to come up in the story. I'm just outlining that with you now because it will come up later in this lesson. Okay, so we've outlined a few things that are happening in this image. Before I dive into our story, which is a juicy one today, let me know if you guys have any questions about this piece. Give me a check mark if we're good. So before I start, have you guys ever heard of the story of Laila and Majnun? Sometimes it's called Laila and Majnun. Have you ever heard it called Maj before? Yeah, okay. You will find that it's not so unusual. Hello, hello. Let me get this camera upright. Today I have some of a black tea with a citrus, and it actually makes two teas together. Tastes interesting, a little bit too strong. We'll see. Okay, this is actually always my favorite story to tell. I think it's because it's so relatable to everyone. But Laila, that name there, you see in lots of different forms, spelled lots of different ways, but it tends to relate to the similar word of love. And Majnun, translated in different forms, can mean possessed. So, or it's not possessed, but obsessed. So you already have the description of your story in the names of your characters. How the story opens up is actually in this scene right here. So Laila and Majnun are between 8 and 10. And as the story goes, boys and girls would often sit on different sides of the spaces in different parts of the classes. And as you grow up, men and women in this Persian society are a lot more segmented off than what we have in the U.S. today. So eventually when there are parties happening, there's a girl's side and a boy's side. I feel like some of that happens without intention in the U.S., but it's definitely purposeful in this society. So the boys and girls were sitting on opposite sides of the room, and as the story goes, the teacher is talking about different parts of the Quran. And rather than say, Allah, the teacher overhears Majnun saying, Laila. So you guys might imagine what happens next. Is the teacher happy to hear a boy in the classroom, instead of talking about God, talking about a girl that he sees across the classroom? No. So this is sort of medieval Iran at this moment. This is a Persian story. What do you think the teacher does to Majnun? We're not allowed to do this in school anymore. Thank goodness. Technically you can in Texas, strangely enough. Yes. He takes a switch and he beats Majnun's hands. So he whips them across his hands until they start to bleed. But he hears across the room, Laila, the girl Majnun has and saying his name over and over again, starts to cry and say, "Stop, stop." And then when people turn to ask why, because you're not ever supposed to interrupt any discipline that's happening, she is crying and turns over her hands and shows that she is bleeding too. So when Majnun is hurt, Laila receives his pain. So this is the core of their story. You guys might imagine what could happen next. Do you think the parents were happy to hear that Laila was receiving this boy's pain? No. What would you suspect? You think this medieval time. We're looking at about a little bit less than 1,000 years ago. What do you think they were suspecting when something unusual like this happened? Magic, right, or some sort of witchcraft, or that there was some sort of curse or ulterior motive. Well, you would think that, but luckily the story opens up in a school scene, so they're surrounded by students, so there's lots of witnesses there, right, and as the story goes. So the parents think that it must be some sort of witchcraft or curse. So, do you think the parents allow the children to stay together forever? You can start to guess how the story is going to go. No. Right. They pull them apart. They're not allowed to be in school together for the next 6 to 8 years. So our time is roughly out, but I think they're aged at about 16. And you guys might guess, as the story goes, Laila and Majnun don't see each other again until they've grown up a lot. And you can think about how much you've grown between the ages of 10 and 14 or 10 and 16. How different some students that you grew up with might look. They come upon each other in a festival, of all things, like a spring festival, kind of like it around Easter. And they are completely blown away. And as the story goes, and what you hear about in most stories like this, is that time stood still when they see each other. And that is something interesting, because that's another cross-cultural theme, and that is a real experience that relates to your own brain and how we deal with adrenaline in a love situation, right? So the adrenaline in that situation actually makes us form a tunnel vision, and it seems like time stands still, which is why if your first romantic experience or first kiss has that, it's so memorable. However, if someone's sneaking up on you and kissing you, it might not be that memorable, right? We have to have that tunnel vision effect of adrenaline for it to stick into our memory. So this is something that's interesting. There are stories all around the world describing falling in love as time standing still. And anyway, to move on, of course, Majnun becomes obsessed with her once again. Laila accepts the obsession and returns the favor. And that night, after seeing each other in the market, this sounds very familiar. Majnun sneaks into her room through her window. So already, what is the story starting to sound like that you guys might be familiar with? Another one in which two teenagers couldn't be together. Aladdin, yeah. Any other ones? Maybe from English class that you've listened? Romeo and Juliet, the classic, right? So to give you a frame of reference, Romeo and Juliet was written almost 500 years after this painting was ever made. So this was also, this painting was already a legend before this image, or this story was the legend before this image was made. Thus, Romeo and Juliet came many, many years later on the other side of the world. Anyway, to go on, you can imagine just hearing that things don't play out well, right? Who should walk in on them? The worst case scenario. The father, right. The father walks in his daughter's room and sees Majnun in there. So this is a rhythmic medieval society here. What is going to happen? Well, what happens to Laila's reputation? Even if nothing had happened, even if he had just walked in, completely destroyed, right? So normally, she would be pushed to marry him, but the dad does not trust or like Majnun. So instead, yeah, it's gone. Instead, Majnun is in fact arrested and beaten. And so what happens to Laila? If he's been beaten, she feels the pain. Exactly, right? So this is not working for Laila. And I still don't know, and if Majnun feels her pain. So I think it might just be a one-way street. He's obsessed with her, but she feels his pain. So I don't know if she really is lucking out. It's not pure empathy there. Yeah, poor Laila. The whole story. Poor Laila. So it doesn't end for Laila. She's still considered the most beautiful and most lovely young maiden in this world, or in this town. So who has the highest power in this kingdom? Think of medieval Persia. You just said Aladdin earlier, so it's similar. Same name. The Sultan, right. The Sultan says, I will marry her. I will marry Laila. She'll be one of my many wives and join my harem. And this is normally actually a good thing. It's a sign of respect to the family. Many women look forward to this in her life, but not Laila. Laila is still obviously in love with Majnun, who's still alive. The Sultan has never been told no before. So he tells Laila then, fine, you will love me and I'll get Majnun off the map. He chains up Majnun to a rock quarry, so where they dig up rocks, and he chooses to go through with the marriage with Laila. In Laila's wedding night, so the ceremony went really quick. Laila's wedding night, she's not happy to be there, obviously, still obsessed with Majnun. She is not going willingly to the Sultan's bed. And so he says, fine, I'll just kill Majnun. And so he does. He goes out to the rock quarry, he fights with Majnun. Majnun warns him, that's fine, kill me, we'll just be together in the afterlife. And tragic story. Can you guys guess what happens to both? They both die. Exactly. They both die. And so no one fully believes the connection until the very end, similar to another story that we might know of. So this is a really intense emotional story. It has won so much love over time that one culture after another has appropriated it, meaning so they actually have it in their own storybooks. And what we'll look at next is a Bollywood adaptation. So I'm going to give you, this is a link right here, and you only have to watch a minute of it. But, it's illustrating the school scene that you guys just saw. I will let you guys click on the link and get started, but you can keep that link because it has the whole rest of the story in there, the one that I just told you, but even better with music and dancing. So I'm going to put the timer up, I'll say for a minute and a half. And then once you're done watching that minute, write what you were surprised about with the adaptation. Is it? My window's open now. That was like the shortest video watch ever. Yeah, this is an interesting clip. This is in fact like a 20-minute full-on musical that happens within a greater 3-hour musical. So the movie is called Am A Shalay. It's a story of like a woman who was kicked out of her own town and then comes back and lives in the U.S. to become a dancer, and then comes back to India and puts on this play to get fame again so that she could open up a school. So they're building up to this throughout the entire movie, and then you see it, which is refreshing, because normally in a lot of movies that I see, it's like you only see clips of the play or something. Yeah, very accurate to the story. It's very interesting too, because we have it's spoken almost completely in like a local dialect, but it's a story not from India, right? You even show you in the background there that you have different scenery from a different time. So I recommend you guys hold on to this link. It's worth watching the whole thing. You can skip through anything that seems too tedious, but everyone likes seeing the post-marriage scene too. You can see her gown that she wears all red, which is not an unusual wedding gown color. Okay, so our cultural canons. Actually, I just asked you guys this earlier, so we already have some of this. Think about a story that we know of that shows lovers with a cosmic connection. So the cosmic connection means that they have something unreal in their life that shows that they should be together. So for example, it was Laila feeling Majnun's pain. That was a cosmic connection. If you guys can look up a photo and post it on the board, I will take, let me think. You guys each find a photo of like the trailer or something, or the poster image. And I will get one too. Oh, I found the right one. So this is the movie Stardust. I remember reading it when I was in high school and then when the movie came out. But it is in fact actually a kind of silly story, but it does deal with like a prophecy that eventually leads the two main characters to come together in this love story. Nice. Classic Aladdin. I would definitely say it's like the magic carpet. That's the cosmic connection, right? Something unreal. Or the genie alone. You don't know how to do it? I just go into Google Images and I write in what I'm looking for, and then it comes up with like the photo. And then I right-click the photo and hit copy, and then I come over to the Blackboard and right-click and hit paste. Yeah, copy paste. Thank you, Elizabeth. Perfect. Oh, you found that one. I loved this version back when I was y'all's age. I think because it was more true to the age. But I also grew up when the Leonardo DiCaprio version came out. Definitely still worth a watch. See, some people say Shakespeare's greatest success was that he could write stories that anyone can identify with, which is, I think, those are the myths and the legends that last, are the ones that we can still identify with. Great work. Trying to go forward. Okay. So, on another note, looking at an artist from what is today the Persian area, so you're thinking Iran, Iraq. This woman caught a lot of attention. This is actually an older image of her work right here by Shirin Shat. And this is a quote from her. It's really about the question of people versus tyranny, she says, and people who fight power versus people who hold power. So tell me about this image that you see here. How is she catching your attention? Writing on the feet, right. So that's like the tag for sure. That's like the big no-no right here. So writing on the feet, why is that catching people's attention? And we did talk about it a little bit earlier. Yes, exactly. So this is essentially blasphemy in an image. This is a huge deal, caught a lot of attention in the Middle East and here in the West as well. And do you think this is purposeful on her part? Probably, yeah. She knows full well what she's saying here. But when you think of the tag on the foot, you don't even have to be able to read the script to try and put this together. When would you see a tag on a person's foot and their feet are like this? Dead, right. So we can start to put things together. We see an Arabic script, we see a tag, we see feet that are bare with the script on it. What do you guys infer that this is about? With your association, with what you understand of current events in the Middle East? It could be. Also, when this piece came out, it could be about war. It could be about women's rights as well. This is the same artist who said, to be a woman in the Middle East is to be political. So just to exist, it means that you're making some sort of statement, which is a really harsh way, but an interesting point of view, especially considering this is her own home as well. So she is we can infer so much before ever even knowing what this translates to, which a lot of people would say makes the image incredibly strong. Like you don't even need to know the text to start to put things together. Okay, so how can we describe the style or process of Laila and Majnun? So I'll go back real quick so we can see the original image before we start this. This piece right here. Going forward, but it's getting stuck. Okay. So let's see. If you guys could raise your hands real quick, you can choose a side. Or are we just going to go for it? I'll let y'all go for it. Okay, Elizabeth, you want to take style, and that means Erin can take process. So Erin, if you can start to describe how this manuscript was made, you can guess too, and I'll help you out. I don't know if we went into detail with the processes. Okay, cool. And Elizabeth, you can describe what it looks like. Perfect. I'll take you off the follow button. There you go. So now you should be able to travel back. The process here, this is a manuscript. I said earlier that it was a manuscript. And consider the tools that they have back in the day. That'll probably give you some input on the material. There you go. Perfect. I normally have the image up here, but I guess I forgot to do that this time. Actually, the piece we looked at last week was definitely made out of tiles. But this one is in fact on paper, but the paint is so thick that it does kind of look like a different dimension too. It's like an early form of paper. In ink as well. So it's like it's a manuscript, so it's from a book, or what it would be in a book. So for example, if you were to write a story by hand, you would call it the writer's manuscript. And back in the day, most writers would work that way. Yeah, really thick paint to look dimensional, totally. Excellent. So you guys give me a check if y'all are ready to move on. Cool. I'm going to click the follow again before I forget. Okay. So compare and contrast. Y'all can work at random with this one. If something comes to your mind. It's going to be really easy to contrast these, but there's maybe a couple of comparisons we can make between last week's work and this week's work. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Are you not the best at, I'm sorry, I just saw your message, Erin. Did you refer to compare and contrast? Oh, that's great. Perfect comparison. Both a type of forbidden love. You're right. One is based in like actual legend or history, and the other one is definitely more of a story. Wonderful observation. And then I would say one interesting comparison is that they both have some sort of divine intervention, right? So people of this time in history, to the work to the left, believe that Justinian was divinely chosen to be emperor, versus in the work to the right you have that divine connection where Laila feels Majnun's pain. So Laila is his empath. Cool. Give me a check if y'all are ready to move on. Perfect. So we're going to go to the impact slide right here. How do you guys think the art world could be affected by Laila and Majnun? You just saw one version earlier. The story was so inspiring. Yeah, exactly. Even to the point that, you know, this is such an old tale, but it's even told in a different culture in a musical format. My dog is sitting next to me right now, and he does not understand that I'm not talking to him, so he keeps making noises in the background. I'm sorry. He's just trying to join in the conversation. All right. So lastly, right here, if you have to choose a box on the screen, tell me how knowledge of this news story might impact you in your own work. So the story or the artwork itself. It's amazing that you have any focus at all with 3 younger siblings. I just have 3 pets, and they just want to be pet. You're the only one home right now? Little fuzzy animals? Oh, you got something in your beard, I see. That's why you're being so weird. Ah, I get you. So we have some common themes that can be reflected in many different cultures and mediums. Whoa! That's a lot of family. Mhm. That's true too. That's a great observation, because if you don't know some of the backstory, that piece is hard to put together as to why it's so important, right? It seems even a little bit boring, or kind of like a documentary. Mhm. And I think this too. This is actually, I think, this Elizabeth's observation up here, themes reflected in many different cultures and mediums. This, I think, is in some way heartwarming to us as artists, to know that there's no fear of you stealing anyone's work or concept, because some of these concepts are just so old, right? In that they've been shared so many times over and over again. So there's no fear of telling that story again. And the knowledge that people today still love to hear that story, and we get excited about it, even if it's completely different characters and completely different situations. I love reading fantasy books. I'll stop the recording.